Welcome to the Architect of Resilience podcast, where we explore the secrets of overcoming life's challenges and unlocking unstoppable strength through deep personal conversations and expert insights.
Welcome to another episode of the Architect of Resilience podcast. Today, I've got Jessica MacNaughton on, who's a pioneering voice in the field of health innovation and mitochondrial resilience. So a lot of topics I've had recently. She's the CEO and co-founder of C60 Power and creator of whatis60.org. Jessica has been instrumental in bringing awareness to the revolutionary potential of carbon 60, which we are going to talk about, and I imagine many of you are not aware of. This is a Nobel Prize-winning molecule with a wide range benefit from energy, inflammation, hormone regulation, and cellular health. I'm really interested to learn a lot more about this compound today. Jessica's own journey into C60 began after her personal health crisis in 2017, prompting a transition from a successful 18-year career in commercial real estate to full-time entrepreneurship here in holistic wellness. Today, she leads efforts to deliver high-quality C60 formulations designed for both humans and pets, aimed at supporting longevity and vitality at a cellular level. Her background spans leadership roles in global Fortune 500 companies and scrappy startups, making her uniquely positioned to translate science into accessible, resilient living. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm excited to get to spend some time with you and your community today.
Yeah, and I think we'll just start with diving into a little bit around the C60, since I kind of led pretty heavily with that, and then we'll probably dive into some of your own views on resilience and impact. But yeah, let's start with that. So, carbon 60, C60. What is it?
Carbon 60 is a molecule of carbon. It looks like a cage-like soccer ball. It was discovered in the mid-'80s by a group of scientists, and in the mid-'90s, they won a Nobel Prize in chemistry for their discovery. And what it does is it works at the cellular level to lift the oxidative burden. It essentially neutralizes oxidative stress and free radicals and turns it back at the cellular level into water. And so for people that don't know what I just said, it's you can think about oxidative stress and free radicals as molecules that essentially rust your body and contribute to aging. So you can think about C60 as a molecule and a powerful antioxidant that slows down the hands of time. The best thing about C60, Chris, is that most people notice within about 30 days of daily use an increase in energy and mental clarity. In addition to neutralizing oxidative stress and free radicals, C60 helps to promote a healthy inflammatory response. So for people that are dealing with chronic inflammation or even acute inflammation issues, C60 is a wonderful tool to have in your tool belt.
Awesome. So, I'm a big promoter of a number of products that, reduce reactive oxygen species like xanthan, so on, which, also passes the blood-brain barrier. My understanding is carbon 60 does some of the same things with passing the blood-brain barrier as well. And I'm interested if we know the level of how powerful of an antioxidant it is compared to some of these other antioxidants that we generally know a little bit better.
That's a great question. It has been characterized as the most powerful antioxidant ever discovered. And that's for a few reasons. Number one, it has some unique characteristics due to its cage-like structure, but it can reset itself again and again and again. It's also been found to not be toxic at any level. So essentially, you can't overdose on it or take too much. And it also doesn't negatively interact with any other medications, vitamins, or supplements. And you mentioned that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. That is true. And it can help act as a carrier mechanism. So it's really nice to take in the morning at the beginning before you take your other supplements, and it can help promote dragging those other supplements to where they need to go.
So with dragging it, that is based on that structure of the molecule, right?
Yeah.
Being able to pull those items inside of that, structure that is hard to break down. Is that correct? Is that my analogy?
Yeah. You're on the right track. Yeah.
Okay. So what would be some good applications for, pairing with things like that you've seen?
Well, it really works with all of the other supplements that you're taking. It doesn't negatively interact. So if you're somebody who's interested in more energy, more mental clarity, if you deal with, fatigue or brain fog, C60 is a really wonderful antioxidant to incorporate into your morning routine. So we don't necessarily make any recommendations about, what you should pair it with. I personally have experimented a lot with ketones. I really love, C60 with some ketones in my coffee in the morning. It's phenomenal just to jumpstart my day. But, biohackers in your community at large, likely they have their own protocol, and we're not doctors. My business partner is a biogeochemist, and, we're supplement creators. So we don't tend to give recommendations about other supplements. Like I'd recommend, that you work with a healthcare provider or functional, expert to help you identify what's best for your own body, and always, test, don't guess. But C60 will not negatively interact with any of those other stacks that you're doing. It works really well. We dissolve it into healthy carrier oils, so organic MCT coconut oil, organic avocado oil, organic extra virgin olive oil, and you can add it easily to coffee, teas, smoothies, or just take it straight from the spoon. And you can take it with or without food. A lot of biohackers enjoy also taking it with hydrogen water.
Yeah, so that's what I wasn't looking for recommendations on other supplements, but more of like, what are the things that, we know have some poor, availability to pull into cells. Like I'm not a big fan of that water because it doesn't last that long in the system, but, hey, does that make that a viable mechanism? Is there other opportunities such as that you're seeing out there? So not necessarily recommendation of those other products or, use cases for particular issues, but is there opportunities with things that we can't normally transport very well that we're able to do so with C60?
I don't really know how to respond to that, but I will say, if you're not a fan of hydrogen water, that if you consume an apple with your spoonful of C60, you can get a very similar response. So you can do that.
Yeah. And well, I was using that as as a segue, because I'm assuming if you used it with hydrogen water, you're actually going to get some, based on my understanding of it, some longer use out of that than the very short window that you would with hydrogen water as its own, which is why I'm not a fan of that. Right. So, but yeah, when it comes to the antioxidant side of that, and it being the strongest antioxidant, is there any concerns around too much reduction in that? As in, we have the issue of, obviously, having some impact from, training, the stress, the response from that stimulates us to be able to grow new muscle. Same thing with, I wouldn't suggest using C60 at that time if you're trying to, grow muscle, just like the same I wouldn't recommend with, having any other sort of antioxidant immediately post-training. But do you see any, have you seen any issues with pairing of that or taking too much where we're just reducing the oxidative burden to have, negate effects of training?
No, actually the opposite. And I think it's a wonderful question. So I'm really glad that you brought it up. A lot of elite athletes and competitive athletes really appreciate C60, specifically because it's an SOD mimic, and it can help to neutralize the delayed onset muscle soreness. And so a lot of athletes come back and they report that their recovery is much faster. They're able to push harder and work out longer, and often report, some of their best performance utilizing C60 in their supplement routine, both pre and post workout, specifically because they're experiencing less soreness and quicker recovery time. So that's a really nice characteristic and feature of it. You asked about whether it could be, if you could, take too much or be toxic at any level. And they've done studies with animals where they gave animals extreme doses of C60. And what they found was at no level was it toxic. And in fact, with some of these studies, what it actually did was extend the animal's life. So that was quite surprising. They've also done some animal studies where they gave C60 to one set of rats and another set didn't get it. And they gave these rats doses of extreme amounts of radiation. And the group of rats that got C60 lived. And so, there's an argument there that in our day and age, where you and I are both on a laptop right now, we've probably got a cell phone on our desk or near our body. We both probably travel on planes quite frequently. We've got a Wi-Fi router probably in our office. Maybe there's a 5G, tower nearby. We're constantly being bombarded in our modern day environment by ionizing radiation. And that extreme exposure to ionizing radiation causes an increase in oxidative stress. So C60 neutralizes that oxidative stress and turns it back into water. So if you're thinking about your cellular health, C60 helps to support like the mitochondrial function. And I'm sure your audience is, well aware that inside our cells, the mitochondria is a cell inside our cells that really produces the energy for the cell. But C60 essentially neutralizes the junk and the stuff that gets into the cell and sweeps it out, neutralizes it, turns it back into water. And it creates an environment at the cellular level where the body can heal itself naturally. So for athletes who are constantly building themselves up and at the same time breaking themselves down to build back up, C60 is very supportive to that process. It also activates pregnenolone, the precursor molecule to all the hormones. So as you know, at the age of 30, our body starts to produce less and less antioxidants naturally. And most of us by the age of 40 start to feel it. We'll have some aches and pains, and, it's harder for us to bounce back than when we're younger. And what C60 does is it helps to provide a natural lift to that hormone function. It's gentle, and people start to notice things like increased energy and mental clarity, which I also mentioned, but it can help support with a youthful look in your appearance. So your hair can grow, it promotes hair growth, your nails can grow. In human studies, when applied topically, it can lessen the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. So it's a really wonderful anti-aging tool in your toolkit. Now, that all being said, Chris, it's not a drug. And that's the one thing that I really want to mention. A lot of people will refer to it as a miracle molecule. And I really hesitate to say it's a miracle because that gives people a feeling of, is it snake oil? It does so many things. But I like to refer to it as like a Swiss Army knife of antioxidants. And I think it is, it's a very, very powerful, I know it's a very powerful antioxidant in the fact that it does so many different things and it can reset itself again and again. The other thing that I didn't mention is that it also helps to promote a balanced immune response and also a balanced histamine response. So I don't know about you, but I for a lot of my life, I really struggled with chronic allergies. And one of the first things that I noticed when I started taking C60 was I wasn't running around with Kleenex under my nose all the time. I was living in Colorado at the time that I met my business partner, and I was living there specifically because I like to hike, bike, ski, all the outside door adventure stuff. And I was always really, really struggling with allergies. And within about 6 months of taking C60, it just wasn't an issue for me anymore. And I found that really fascinating. My hair started to grow. Yeah. I noticed expanded bandwidth, which I would describe as it feels like your synapses are firing appropriately. So that is a really wonderful thing for executives, entrepreneurs, top performers, biohackers, that it essentially gives you energy, even when energy to work, energy to live, energy to play. Even on the days that you don't feel like working, you've got great energy. And that's the nicest thing.
Let's talk about maximizing your strength and resilience. When chasing my 1,000-pound squat, I made my own supplements out of necessity to help push my body to its physical limits. So I founded Build Fast Formula because I needed supplements that actually worked every time I trained. All our formulas are backed by peer-reviewed research and third-party informed sport tested for quality and safety. Listeners can get 10% off by using code RESILIENCE at buildfastformula.com. That's code RESILIENCE for 10% off everything at buildfastformula.com. Find your formula and feel your physicality today. Yeah, you just covered a lot of ground, so I might have several follow-up questions on that. But it's absolutely fascinating the way that it, this product that focuses on reducing oxidative stress actually has an impact on hormonal balance. So there's definitely so many applications as you age with the things that we're talking about here, from reduction in inflammation. We haven't dove into cognition too much yet, but the histamine response, that's really, really interesting. So I think that this is an often overlooked area that people have histamine issues that are really impairing their function. And as for peptide users, that can be one of the issues that causes, inability to use certain peptides, or inability to use them for long periods of time, or where they have to come off of them because they start getting a histamine response from either the peptide or the carrier water that they're reconstituting with. So that has a really interesting play with people, in that realm, because again, that is one of the few side effects that could potentiate from peptides, which they're generally relatively safe. But if you're getting a histamine response from that peptide, you basically have to cease using those ones. And this is an issue, and I think histamine in general, I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I know specifically in females and peptides that we see a lot more histamine response issues. And I believe in general that's the case for, impact on health issues as well, where it really gets lost in a whole lot of other potential issues. So, but you said about 6 months you started really seeing a difference in the histamine side of that.
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened. It was about 6 months. I'm personally not a peptide expert, so I don't want to cover that ground, but I would refer to you that if you want to dive into the conversation around C60 and peptides, Jay Campbell is a well-known user of peptides, and he's got C60 Power woven into his morning routine, specifically our cinnamon flavor. And I think he would be a great, reference or resource to kind of dive into all things peptides and histamine response, because I typically I have we have a great network of doctors that utilize C60 in their protocol, and some are peptide experts. And if you wanted to offline with any of them or bring them on as a guest, I'd be happy to share with you those folks, because I don't want to speak about something that is not my level of expertise. But
no, I was just sharing that commentary from my standpoint to the audience. So.
Yeah. But for me, what happened was, I met my business partner in 2017, and he had a really amazing experience with C60. I mentioned he's a biogeochemist, and he was working on a project to prove a more efficient form of nuclear fusion. And during his experimentation with his team, and this is in a previous life, he needed to protect himself and his team from radiation exposure. And I mentioned earlier the studies around
when you
radiation.
brought that up, I was actually thinking it just didn't seem good timing to ask you for the backstory on how the C60 came about because of the radiation exposure piece. So let's dive into that backstory, because that is, I think, very relative, especially for those people that are looking to, optimize, mitochondrial function and things of those nature. They're obviously fairly aware of EMF's dangers and, everything in that spectrum. Yeah. But this is a really fascinating piece. So I'd love to hear it.
Well, especially for your executive tribe that travels a lot. I spend a lot of time on airplanes and in airports, and it's exhausting. And when you're at altitude, you're getting radiation from being at high altitude, not to mention, going through these things at the airport. But what happened was my business partner was looking for a way to protect himself and his team from the radiation exposure for this experimentation and work that they were going to do. And at the time, he had been diagnosed with dry macular degeneration. And so he had some concerns about his future vision health. He also had another associate on his team who had wet macular degeneration. And this individual actually had lesions on the back of his eyes. And he was at risk for going blind. Now, this individual on his team, we have permission to talk about this. He said it's okay for us to share this story. So I feel comfortable sharing the story. This individual also had type 2 diabetes, and he was really interested in taking back control over his health. So he made kind of the common sense changes to his lifestyle that anybody who was concerned about having diabetes and wet macular degeneration would. He changed his diet. He started walking. Because he was an engineer, he was measuring all of the healthy lifestyle choices that he was implementing. But the long story short is this. My business partner, within about 7 to 8 months of using C60 on a daily basis, he started to feel better. He had a lot of old injuries from motocross and, younger, when he was younger, doing sports and things. And he just noticed that he started to feel better in general. And he wasn't necessarily expecting that out of the gate. He was really utilizing it specifically for radiation protection in a laboratory environment. And what happened was he went to his optometrist, and this individual had been working, in his space for 30 plus years. And Ken went in to see him, and he said, I don't know what you've been doing, and I don't really know what to tell you, but your dry macular degeneration is no longer visible. And so this doctor was floored. The individual that I mentioned who had type 2 diabetes, he utilized it for about 1.5 years. And after about 1.5 years, his wet macular degeneration was no longer visible. So I want to put a pause right here, Chris, because again, I want to reiterate, C60 is not a cure. It's not a drug. It's not going to mitigate any disease. But what happened in those cases is it supported the mitochondrial function. You can think about your ocular nerve and your brain and all of the mitochondria that's in your head and in your eyes. There's a lot. So it went to work. It was fighting the inflammation, essentially. It was neutralizing that oxidative stress, and it was helping the body to heal and repair. And when C60 is coupled with healthy lifestyle choices, we're big advocates for, focusing on optimizing your sleep, having a sleep hygiene situation, drinking plenty of clean water, moving your body every day, trying to eat whole organic foods when you can, eliminating or managing toxic chemicals and situations in your life, doing the best of your ability to kind of manage your stress. When you combine that with C60, it's very powerful. And it just sets the stage for the body to heal itself naturally. So that was really the inception of what put us on our trajectory, was Ken's experience that was profound and, quite frankly, life-changing. Now, when I met him, I'm sitting here in front of you with glasses on, and I haven't had a vision event yet. So my vision situation is I have astigmatism, and I also have lifestyle problems because I'm on a computer and a phone more than I should be. But for me, the first thing that I noticed was I had debilitating PMS symptoms. I would, in my previous life in commercial real estate, if I had the leisure of having a day a month where I could just lay in bed, which I never had the leisure of that, I would just be writhing in pain. I would kind of like white knuckle through my day once a month because I have endometriosis and just really painful periods. When I first started taking C60, within that first 6-month period, that intense pain, I just didn't notice it anymore. My period would come into town and it would leave town, and I would know no difference. I was just like, and it wasn't like a flash of a bolt of lightning went off in my head or something. I just noticed one day that I wasn't in pain. My nose wasn't running. My hair was growing. I had a short little bob haircut all throughout my 20s and 30s because I just couldn't get my hair to grow. And the biggest thing for me that was a life changer, as somebody who had always been kind of having a work hard, play hard lifestyle, was just expanded bandwidth. You and I talked about this a little bit before we started this conversation on the podcast. And to me, it just felt like I could handle so much more stress. All the stresses of life and family and business could come at me. And I felt like Neo in the Matrix. Like I was just in the flow. I could deal with it. And I wasn't getting stressed out. I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. I just felt grounded in my own self. And so C60, in my opinion, has been suppressed on purpose. It's kind of a hard thing to explain because there's a fair amount of chemistry and science involved. And, you know, sometimes it goes over people's heads. But the good news is we're, you know, after the last 5 years coming out of the pandemic, society is changing and turning, and people are really interested in health and wellness. And the biohacking community is really embracing C60 and the story behind it. And there's a couple things that I would love to share with you that are really important for people that want to discover C60, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So there's a handful of producers that manufacture great C60, but not unlike what happened with the CBD industry. You know, if you can think about 15 years ago, people didn't have an awareness that, CBD could help with their dog having seizures or their kids having seizures or pain or things like that. But now you can buy it at the gas station. And you probably, if you reflect back over the last 15 years, you might think like, you've probably heard stories in the news about, different qualities of, CBD, some having mold in them and not being high quality or heavily sprayed with chemicals. That's no different than our small little C60 space. And so there's some things that you need to know. The first thing is that you always want to look for sublimated C60. Most of the companies out there that are selling a C60 product are using a process where there's solvents involved in the manufacturing, and it's specifically methylbenzene, which is toluene. It's an industrial solvent, and then they bake it off. They give it a fancy name. And you don't need that. You don't need it. Sublimation is a process with evaporation involved, and it is it's more expensive. It's wildly more expensive. But there's none of this toxic solvents involved. It takes longer. It's harder to do, but it's 99.99% pure. So you want to look for that. The other thing is, on labeling and things, sometimes you'll see 99.9 or 99.95. You just want to go for 99.99 sublimated C60. The next thing is you want to look for companies that third-party test. Now, some companies will say, oh, we test in-house, but testing in-house is like, in my opinion, counting your own votes. Doesn't really make a lot of sense because you can manipulate the end result. So look for groups that third-party test. We use 100% organic, healthy oils. Some companies will sell C60 with sunflower oil. You probably know, and your community knows, if you're trying to fight inflammation, why would you be consuming sunflower oil or any seed oils for that matter? You just wouldn't. I've seen some people manufacture it with hemp seed oil, and I think the intent there is good. However, hemp seed oil has a tendency to go rancid, so just skip that. Just avoid it altogether. And you want to know who's behind the company. So if it's not easy for you to figure out what the intent is, what they're up to, who it is, just be on the lookout. And the last thing that I'll say is that some companies do sell products claiming that there's C60 in it, and there's not. There's companies that are selling products with activated charcoal. So on all of our products at shopc60.com, there's a QR code. When you get it, you can scan it, you can see the test, you have full transparency, and it's 100% satisfaction guarantee. So like I said, handful of folks out there that are doing a good job, but then there is a fair amount that are swindlers. And you just want to be on the lookout for that. We have tested all of the products in the market, so I know who's legit and who's not, who's faking the funk and who's telling the truth. And you just want to be your own advocate. And I know this community is really good at doing their own research. And that's the biggest thing that I would say is do your own research.
Excellent. So there's a couple things that you mentioned there. One of those was the industry's traction around getting C60 more commonly known in the market, and maybe some of the obstacles that have stood in the way of that. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think the origin of C60 is very unusual. It was discovered in the atmosphere of large red stars. It's kind of like a far out, story. And it exists naturally on the Earth in the places where asteroids have hit and meteors have hit. And when you light a candle, there's like a little, at that instant little flick when a candle gets lit, and a tiny little bit of C60 is created, not enough to do anything with. But scientists have theorized that C60 might have been part of the original scaffolding of the Earth. And it's a fairly complex, unique molecule. Scientists and people in the science community will remember in learning about chemistry about buckyballs. It was named after Buckminster Fuller, who was a futurist and a scientist and an architect in the 1960s. He's the guy. He was like the geodesic dome guy, and the scientist that discovered it named it after him, specifically in honor of him, because the molecule kind of looks like a geodesic dome. So scientists will know about that, but it's such an interesting molecule, and it really hasn't had its time yet. And so I would say we're still kind of in the early adapter phase. Now, if you really want to geek out on the science behind it, we have a nonprofit. It's called whatisc60.org, and you can go there and learn about all the animal studies. And if you want to check out the human studies and all the studies have been done on humans, you can go to shopc60.com/research, and you can dive in there. But in my opinion, I think it's been suppressed, because it has some really unique properties and some early discoveries. In 2011, they were doing a study with rats, and what they found were that the rats that got the C60, it doubled their lifespan. I mentioned that earlier. But yep. the way that it did that was really, I think, part of the story behind why it's been suppressed, in that it eliminated their cancers and age-related tumors. So these rats that they used were Wistar rats, and they're genetically modified, and they're essentially designed to have a very short lifespan because they are test animals. And so these rats typically get cancers, and that's how they die, because they're being tested on. But in this case, they ended up having to sacrifice the rats because the rats kept living beyond the time that they ever anticipated, and they wanted to publish the study. So I'm just going to pause there because I don't want to say too much about that. There's topics in our space that you can.
Well, yeah, there's a big difference. It's not saying, hey, this is going to cure this or that.
Exactly.
But understanding that there is a potential to have some impact on the pathways that do affect, the creation of those things or how, is a different discussion, because I don't think anybody's going to interpret your statements as saying, hey, this product is going to cure that. Like, that's
because
not.
I want to be clear about that. It's not going to do that. But it's very interesting, and we're in the early stages, and I really do think over the next 5 to 10 years, actually, I predict within the next 10 years, C60 is going to be widely known.
Let's dive into the world of optimizing your overall health. With pushing my physical limits, I encountered significant reductions in my health, and I reached out to Merrick Health as the premier telehealth service. I loved their personalized health coaching from the comfort of my home. They empower you with the choice of self-service diagnostic labs, or what I chose, the guided optimization with expert interpretations of blood work, health coaching, medications delivered to my door. Merrick Health is your partner in optimizing your health. Listeners can seize a fantastic 10% discount off their first blood work with code RESILIENCE at merrickhealth.com. That's code RESILIENCE for 10% off. Yeah, I hope so. So I'm just in the early phases of using it myself. I use it the same way that you mentioned, Jay, using that with ketones and coffee in the morning. And I can't help, which I know you won't comment on because you said you don't have a lot of expertise there. But when you're talking about the maculopathy and some of those things, I'm going straight to SLUPP332, which has the ability to also target the receptors in these very hard to reach areas like your organs and your eyes and things that, when paired with other modalities, seem to deliver improvements. Or same thing as the compound BAM15 that is literally getting used in research around some of those same things that those rats lived longer in. And those studies are currently active or in process that you can go look up and see. So, when we think about different mechanisms kind of pairing well together, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to have an impact on those pathways, as I say. Certainly not like any sort of like, this is a fix for X or X.
Right.
But, hopefully, that's the job and the thought process of the listeners for my podcast is, how can you ensure that you've got the best cellular function possible? It doesn't prevent those things from happening, right? But being in better cellular metabolic health does certainly have an impact on, the propagation or potential of those things, right? So, yeah. Well, we skipped over. Well, I guess we didn't. You did talk about your, your personal, I guess, health crisis that ended up leading into your path into, this space. I'm guessing that was the story you were talking about, the withering pain that went away.
Well, I had a burnout experience, really, just from years of like adrenal burnout, from years of, I mentioned work hard, play hard. And also that kind of dovetailed with the death of my father. And, sometimes life just presents you with a different door, a different opportunity that opens up. And, Ken and I met at a time where I was I was just exhausted from the lifestyle that I had been living. And I was also fatigued and brokenhearted over the departure of my father. And he had a great idea, and I had a very strong business background, and our worlds just kind of collided. Quite frankly, it was I would say it's been an accidental adventure that's turned out wonderful, because Chris, I get to be on the receiving end of what I call love letters every single day from people from all different walks of life. The vast majority of our customers are over the age of 40, but as time goes on, and younger people in their 30s and 20s who are also struggling with health challenges, mitochondrial function, challenges with fatigue and energy and exhaustion, and even ED, they find out about C60 and they're coming in to our community. I get to be on the receiving end of love letters where people are telling me how their life has been changed so positively. And, I don't really want to talk about disease state, but what I can tell you is that if across the spectrum, any type of issue where someone's dealing with inflammation as the underlying issue, or mitochondrial dysfunction as the underlying issue, or an issue where they're really trying to optimize their cellular function, C60 is wildly supportive. And what I've seen time and time again is that once people get their energy back, the sky is kind of the limit for their life, for the next chapter of their life, the next phase, the next stage. So it's really cool when I get an email or a video from a guy who's 76 and he's water skiing again. Or I get a guy and his wife and they're in their late 60s and they're surfing in Fiji. And they're like, hey, Jess, I just want to say thanks. Check out what I'm up to today. So this is, it's really inspiring, and it's really a worthwhile adventure. I read a testimonial today from a woman who was 86, and she said, you know what? I'm 86. I didn't really like the price because I'm on fixed income. However, the truth of the matter was I was having a hard time even staying awake during the day. And now I get up and I don't even need a nap. And you're a godsend to me. Like the products that you're producing and creating are a godsend. And so the exciting thing is that people are getting a longer lease on life. They're getting their energy and their mental clarity back. They're fighting fatigue and brain fog. And my big goal, my big kind of mission and purpose behind this is that I know everybody has a special and unique purpose on the planet. Like this is a very exciting time to be alive. And I think our responsibility over the next 5 years is not die from something stupid. So I think we're going to see amazing, we already have in the last 5 years seen amazing changes in health and wellness and technology. And as long as we can hang in there and keep our body healthy and prevent all of this toxic soup from really harming us that we live in, we're going to be able to do what we came here to do. And that's what I want to help support people with C60 Power. It's just one small little piece of the puzzle, but it's the critical piece. So you can have the energy to be on purpose. And that's my big dream for how C60 can be supportive. The other thing is that I forgot to mention, Chris, is that I'm somebody who's dealt with some concussions from skiing accidents. And we have a tremendous amount of former professional athletes, specifically football players, who have dealt with traumatic brain injury. And we have a whole cohort of concierge doctors who utilize C60 specifically to help with TBI. So if you're somebody who is recovering from past sports injuries or traumatic brain injuries, C60 is a great tool to add in to your toolkit with all the other wonderful modalities that you're utilizing. My husband has been on a situation, a path where he's got Lyme disease. And so we've been down the detox, kind of biohacker path for years and years and years to support that. And C60 is critical for him on, maintaining his energy levels and his mental cognition. And it's been a godsend for many people who are struggling with unusual situations.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the context around this. I think it should hopefully connect the dots why I had you on, because just like talking about, TBIs, for example, pairing that with some other, peptides like TB500 or GHK or some of the neuroprotective ARA290s, right? So we're impacting that way, but also then impacting having a product that's passing that blood-brain barrier, reducing the oxidative load, or again, if we're talking about, supporting the mitochondrial function, you're using SLU or BAM to support those, cellular dynamics of the fusion or fission processes, increasing the biogenesis and, the function of the mitochondria. At the same time, if we can reduce that oxidative load in the cell, you're going to further enhance these things. So, just thinking about those pathways, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm really excited to be on this journey. And I've got several of my clients using this at this time as well. So hopefully I'll have a few good stories to share back your way.
I'm excited about that. Before we jump, do you mind if I just kind of explain the mechanism of delivery?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So C60 is not water soluble. Well, there is a C60 that exists that's water soluble, but it hasn't been proven to not be toxic. So if anyone, that's a big disclaimer. If you find a product that is, you need to know that there are no studies that prove that the water soluble C60 is not toxic. So we use, as I mentioned, 99.99% pure sublimated C60, and we dissolve it into healthy carrier oils. So we put it into healthy carrier oils such as organic avocado oil, organic MCT coconut oil, and organic extra virgin olive oil. And it's very simple. All you have to do is take a teaspoon of it in the morning. As I mentioned earlier, you can add it to coffee, tea, smoothies. You can take it straight off the spoon with or without food.
I love your gummies, by the way. So,
I'm glad you mentioned
most
that.
people make gummies like too sweet, and those are just like, they're so good, but in a not too sweet. Like, I love those, especially when you're traveling.
Yeah, these are perfect for travel, and these are ideal to keep in your bag when, for executives and athletes when you're traveling. They're also great, for athletes. If you're biking, you can put them in your bike shorts. You're hiking, throw them in your backpack, stick it in your sports bra. If you're at the gym, they're made with whole coconut oil, and you're going to get a quick source of ketones. And we have two types. One is a sugar-free version made with allulose and monk fruit, and then a sugar version, which just has 3 grams of sugar per gummy. So they're not going to whack you out. They're not going to really spike your blood sugar. The nice thing is, if people don't enjoy consuming oil, some people have an issue with texture. Oftentimes, like grandparents or younger children, the gummies are just a great hit. The difference is, though, that I want to mention, the real power is in the oil. We can saturate and infuse more C60 into the oils. So the ideal combination is take a spoonful of the oil in the morning and then have a gummy in the afternoon, sometime between 2 and 3, when you start to notice that afternoon crash, and it will help power you through the rest of your day. I mentioned earlier that that there are studies where C60 has been proven in human studies to lessen the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. And so consequently, we have developed an anti-aging skincare line. So we have an anti-gravity serum, which is great for the youthful look and tone of your skin on your neck and on your face. And it's great for both men and women. Oftentimes couples fight over it. And we have a youth renewal eye cream, which can be applied to the under eye area over here. And it's great for, bags and dark circles and those fine lines. But you know what you're going to love about this, Chris, is that we've got copper peptides in our youth renewal eye cream. So you'll have to...
I saw that.
You'll have to dive in there. We also have a C60 Skin product, which is really wonderful to apply if you've had too much sunshine. I don't know about you, but I'm often outside gardening in my backyard, and sometimes As a fair-skinned person, I get a little bit more sun than I was counting on, and I don't want to burn, and I don't want to peel. And so if you happen to get too much and you get too pink, if you apply this topically after too much sun, it really can soak up that oxidative stress. And most people find out that they don't end up peeling. The sunshine is just absorbed into your skin, kind of turns into a nice golden tan. It works really well with the histamine response. If you get a bug bite and you have an itch, you can just apply that topically. It will mellow out that itch, and you will find out that it will also help promote wound healing. And we also have a fun product called C60 Sexy, which is it's an edible massage oil, and it is it's essentially helps to lubricate for men and women, and really helps with connection and intimacy as well. So some really great options. We had people ask us some years ago, well, can I give C60 oils to my pets? And you absolutely can. So if you're somebody who has, a puppy or a cat in your life, or even horses, C60 is great for animals as well. And so we have a whole line specifically for pets.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I think we hit upon where to find you and find more information. So what is C60? Shop C60. You can get a discount code if you go to the link in the notes. Get a discount on products. And anything I missed there?
I think you got it. Yeah, it's whatisc60.org for the research, and shopc60.com utilizing your link.
So, all right. Appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your Friday.
Thanks, Chris.